Good evening. I'm Jennifer Gigi Ferguson, candidate for U.S. Senate. Tonight we have with us Chili Most, Fight for Your Rights. I want to play for you before we get started a little bit about, I want to play for you this video so you know who we're talking to and about. Okay? Let's see if we can get this on here clearly because I want you to truly be able to see this. It is. We've been having some difficulties tonight, but we're still going to get this done. Here we go.
Was inspired by the greatest American this country's ever produced, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Overlord, Dr. King, organize. This one's for you. Protest, no. Fight, fight, fight for your rights. Fight for your rights. Fight, 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 fight for your rights. Fight for your rights. People of the world, as the struggle continues, fight, fight, fight for your rights. Pull yourself up from your bootstraps and tie them up real tight. Stop going for the okie doke, and soon you will see the light. Many before you have shed a lot of blood, and many have given up their lives in spite. Against all odds, they took it to the streets and fought back for everybody's civil rights. If you wanna save your children, you must fight, fight, fight for your rights. If you wanna save your dreams, don't get it twisted. Fight, fight, fight for your rights. If you wanna save your schools, you must fight, fight, fight for your rights. If you wanna save your jobs, don't get it twisted. Fight, fight, fight for your rights. If you profess you know your history, then you know this ain't no video game. Stop tripping, pointing fingers at others, trying to find someone else to blame. If our problems are gonna get solved, then you gotta be a part of the solution. Time is running out on us. Oh yeah, the world needs a peaceful resolution. If you wanna save your businesses, you must fight, fight, fight for your rights. If you wanna save your churches, don't get it twisted. Fight, fight, fight for your rights. If you wanna save your families, you must fight, fight, fight for your rights. If you wanna save your country, don't get it twisted. Fight, fight for your rights. Break it down. Overlord. This joint is dedicated to all the people who feel like their rights are being taken away from them. There's only one real solution to this problem. Protest! People of the world!
Okay, Shirley, I know I've had people tell me Chili Most is on the phone calling in from California. So, Chili, I've had people tell me that video is old. However, I know that video was actually made. Was it in 2015?
Well, let me just say this: people, you know, people might tell you that God is old, but we all know that He's omnipresent. He's the beginning and the end, Alpha and Omega. So
All
a
right.
lot of times people critique things for their own agendas and own reasons, but fight for rights is the tenor of the times. You look around the world today, what happened in Paris yesterday, what's happening in Germany today, it's happening in every city, every county, every state, every country, on every continent. People's rights are being challenged. That's why it's a tenor of the times. So if people could criticize Jesus Christ, I'll take some criticism.
Okay. And basically, when you say the tenor of the times, I know what tenor of the times means to me. What does tenor of the times mean to you?
Well, what does it mean to you?
No, I'm doing the interview.
I know, but we having a conversation. You know, we just
Okay. So the tenor of the times for me means this is what's going on now.
Exactly.
This is exactly where we are right now. This is what we're facing right now. And this is basically that's it.
Well, the tenor of the times, if you look at what's happening now, you look at every phase of life, people are being challenged, the rights are being challenged, not only with the current administration, but just in general. If you look at, you know, the gun violence that's going on in schools today, you look at the homelessness, you look at, people try to say that the job market is good at this time, but if you come down to Watts, California, any inner city, unemployment is over 50%. So if you look at any phase or any walk of life, people's rights are being challenged.
Yes, they are.
That's what Fight for Your Rights is. Fight for Your Rights is first of all, let's get this straight. It's a dedication to Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who stood for nonviolence, but died for people's rights. So let me just back up a little bit. When I did the In Love with Love CD, In Love with Love CD, was a lot of ballads on there, and I put 2 songs on there, Stop the Violence and Fight for Your Rights, which is a dedication to Dr. King, and as everybody knows, he stood for nonviolence but died for people's rights. And people ask me, well, why would you put those 2 songs on In Love with Love CD with all these ballads? I said, because they're love songs. They're love songs. Well, anyway, so I lead, for those out there that are listening now, I currently lead the international Stop the Violence, In Love with Love campaign because of the senseless killing.
Yes.
Our goal is to break down the barriers of age, race, gender, and religion to change the mindset of humanity by putting God first and saving the young people of the world. They are the future, and God is the Alpha and Omega. And so when I was blessed to have a radio show, which Sister Gigi was just on a week or so ago, I've been on over 6 years, over 2,500 radio appearances, over 200 million listeners on stations across the nation. God has blessed me to open up the door for me to do that. I started my show on W, V as in Victory, F as in God, F as in Frank, G as in God, WVFG, 107.5 FM in Uniontown, Alabama, right outside of Selma. For those that's listening to the show today, you might want to take a few notes. So get paper and pen, and we're going to be giving you some information. And so as I started the show, the theme of the radio show is Fight for Your Rights. You know, as you know, Selma, Alabama, for those who know the history about Selma, you know, in 1965, Edmund Pettus Bridge,
Yes.
you know, as brothers and sisters was getting ready to march from Selma to Montgomery.
Mm-hmm.
It was beat down. It was shown on CBS News. People all around the world seen the beat down from state troopers, police departments, the Ku Klux Klan, and they was deputizing white brothers and sisters, anybody who wanted to be a part of this. They were taking off the legs off of tables. They used cattle prods. They used whips. And when you see the movie Selma, they show the scene on Edmund Pettus Bridge. They show the horses and the police, the state troopers beating down brothers and sisters. But actually, that lasted all day long into the night as they ran them all the way back to Brown Chapel Church and the churches and beat people all into the night. But anyway, the next day, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. put out a clarion call on the national news to anybody who wanted to be a part of this injustice to come down and support him. So people all around the nation came down to Selma, Alabama. And as they got on Edmund Pettus Bridge the next day, as he marched up to lead this march across the bridge, and the state troopers and the police and everybody showed back up, he knelt down and prayed. And he got a message from God to turn around, and he walked back, and they didn't march that day. And they show you how God works. 2 weeks later, the same brothers and sisters who beat down the freedom fighters 2 weeks previous to that time had to escort those brothers and sisters to Montgomery because, you know, the President Johnson at that time reached out to Governor Wallace, and they made an agreement to make that move. And so if you put God first in your life, as you do, Sister Gigi, you're a prophetess as well, if you put God first and you have the patience, things will work out. So, you know, fight for your rights. For those who see it now, and they might want to critique it probably because they want to see somebody that they are working with currently in the video, maybe Bernie Sanders or somebody in this last election, or for whatever reasons they want to put somebody in it that they want to be in it. But if you look at that video, the video's been placed in museums, they're used in college courses. The historical legacy that's in that video, brothers and sisters might not know. For those who might want to put somebody that they know in the video, they might not know who Medgar Evers was.
But you know, okay, I'm going to cut in a little bit here because one of the things it does,
that's what that's about. Go ahead,
it gives history. It gives history, and it allows people to see the history. And bringing you on, you're giving the history that a lot of people do not get of what preceded that march. And so sitting and describing an all-day beatdown. And a lot of people don't understand the knee bending. And I see that as part one and the same because it was abuse and racism in the 50s and the 60s, and it has not stopped. And that's when I look at it and I say, okay, this is the tenor of the times. Because here we are in 2018, and we still have, maybe not in the group, but we still have our young and old black men and our youth being beat down by the police.
Mm-hmm.
And I see that as part of one and part in the same. Now, I was just at a conference, and one of the things they stated, and I want your opinion of this, is a lot of what Black Americans, they say African Americans, however people want to put it, They say all of this racism stems from slavery. Chili, how do you see that?
Well, let me just say, Sister Gigi, we just came off the 50th year commemoration of the assassination of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Yes.
And so if you look back to 2018 and what we're doing now, 50 years ago, you can see that we've moved forward in some ways and haven't moved forward in other ways. But if you want to talk about slavery, if you look at slavery, Brother Kanye West, made a controversial remark a few weeks back that said slavery was a choice. I just think he was ill-informed, but I wish the brother, I want everybody to pray for him and hopefully get the right knowledge to move forward whichever way he wants to go. But I already know what his agenda is, but we won't talk about that. But you want to talk about slavery. Look back to slavery. This country was the first, when you look at Wall Street, the first commodity on Wall Street was our black brothers and sisters who came here from Africa. That was the number one commodity on Wall Street. And the second commodity was cotton. But if you look back and just trace the history, coming from Africa, we didn't come here, we didn't take a cruise here like you take cruises today. We came here through the Middle Passage, and when you look at some of the Holocaust that's happened in the history of this world, certainly the Jewish Holocaust was terrible. I just want everybody to know, as I lead the International Stop the Violence and Love of Love campaign, in my mind, one life lost is one life too many anywhere on the planet.
Yes.
One life lost is one life too many anywhere on the planet. But as we came through this Middle Passage, you think about the 5 or 6 million Jewish brothers and sisters who was killed in Germany, and there's been other. The Germans, before they did it to the Jewish brothers and sisters, if you know the history, they went to northern Africa and killed some Africans to practice Holocaust in the 1890s before they did that in the 1930s and 40s. But when you look at over 100 million African brothers and sisters get here, and then once we got here, the hundreds of years of slavery here, and then when you talk about the mass incarceration that we're experiencing now, that came right after slavery, but it was called convict leasing. So what happened after so-called slavery was over?
I'm not trying to go through the whole. I'm not trying to go through the whole history. What I'm asking is, do you see that connection between what is going on with the private prisons, the high school to prison pipeline, and all the things that are going on? Do you see a connection between that and slavery? That's what I'm asking. Do you see a connection between those two?
That's what I was getting ready to connect the dots with. After slavery, we went into convict leasing. Convict leasing was the birth of mass incarceration. Because for those out there who don't know what convict leasing is, when brothers and sisters got out of slavery, you could just be walking down the street. The states in the South made deals with the prisons to get free. They still wanted to continue free labor. So they put brothers and sisters in these camps, and the states was paid off from the slave masters to continue this free labor, which is the same thing as mass incarceration today. But convict leasing was so cruel, such a Gigi. What they would do, it was just like the old chain gangs. I know for those out there that came in the 50s and the 60s when Sam Cooke did that song, Working on the Chain Gang, they would chain these brothers and sisters up all day, 18, 20 hours. They lived chained up with each other as they built the railroads, as they built the infrastructures throughout the South, all across this country, chained up with each other. in the swamps, and they had to defecate on themselves. They couldn't get away. They couldn't leave these chains, and they worked all day and night with these chains. And so if you fast forward it to now, Sister Gigi, with mass incarceration and privatization of the jails that we have today, brothers and sisters, in some states, they make between 8 cents and 15 cents an hour doing the work. But if they were on the outside of these prisons, they would be making $20 to $30 to $35 an hour if it was a civilian working. And so you can see the connection between convict leasing right after slavery to the prison pipeline to mass incarceration today. That's just a simple history of it.
Okay. And so I'm also looking, I think our Attorney General here in Washington State is suing so that people who are in private prisons in Washington State can be paid, I believe, minimum wage. With you bringing that up, I hadn't looked at it, but I do remember seeing something about that here in Washington State. But what was strange for me was, as I was out walking, and talking with people, I had a young man who has been in and out of prison, who stated, I can't support you because you're going to hurt those of us who are in prison. And what? He said, when we work for the private prisons, we can't get paid, but we get extra things like extra foods, we get TVs, we get radios. And in my mind, I'm thinking, whoa, they're making life for them in jail comfortable, and so comfortable that they're actually believing it's okay to be in a private prison because it's bringing some normalcy to their life. Have you heard anything about that?
Well, there's some people that's still slaves in their minds, Sister Gigi. Institutionalized. Sure. Some brothers, I know a great friend of mine, his nephew, he's a great musician. I'm not going to mention his name, but he's a great musician. His nephew has been in jail, in and out of jails, and still in jail right now, since he was the age of 12 years old. And when he got out, he went back in jail within 30 days. So some people become institutionalized, and so that's why the reentry programs are so important, because they have to be counseled to understand that living in a cage, when somebody tells you what you can do, when you eat, when you sleep, and when you walk in that jail and you in that 12 by 18 foot cell, they feel like just because they can see a little television or get maybe a little bit of food or whatever, but that's the way that they want to live their life. Life is all about choices now. But
yes, that's true.
You tell me about 80 to 90% of the prisoners in jail are lucky to live like that. I won't believe that at all.
No. And just like I don't believe 80 to 90% of the prisoners in jail want to be there, I also don't believe the people who are homeless choose to be homeless. Unless there's a mental health issue. Now, I have spoken with some of our veterans who are, because of PTSD and because of some of mental health issues, they're more comfortable sleeping outside, or they need to be in a place by themselves as more of a recluse. But the steps that they need to take in order to go from being homeless to being in a place of their own, they have to go into a shelter. And a shelter does not work for people who have PTSD and who have been in war. It just doesn't work. And it's obvious most of the people who are sitting in our Senate and our Congress and people who are trying to force our veterans that are on the streets because of mental illness, PTSD, don't understand, and therefore they cannot create an environment for them. And I've become extremely upset knowing that we have more housing, more empty houses than we have individuals who are homeless. And so that's a whole nother story. But that really gets to me, because the cost of living has gone up immensely, and it doesn't increase. Wages don't increase. So there are actually people out there who are working. We call them working poor. They're working and they're living in homeless shelters. That is ridiculous, to work a 40-hour-week job and have to go to a homeless shelter. So when I listen to Fight for Your Rights, and I think about, I don't think we have to physically go out and fight as they're doing in the video, but we have to stand up. We have to organize. We have to work together. We have to unite and unify. And I think one of the things that the Democrats and the Republicans, the duopoly, have done extremely well, and the extreme rich, the 1-2%, has done extremely well, is to divide the nation. They divide the nation by race. They divide the nation by culture. They divide the nation by religious beliefs. They divide the nation ethnicity. Everything causes the division. And a lot of the people who voted to put number 45 in office were poor people, because he was saying, I'm going to give you jobs. I'm going to do these things. And he's not giving them jobs. Their jobs are not coming. Homelessness is increasing. And that's the reason, that's how I see Fight for Your Rights, fight for your civil liberties, fight for those things that we should have, like food, clothing, shelter, medical, which single payer, medical for all, or here in Washington State, we're talking about universal health care. That's what I see when I hear Fight for Your Rights. And to me, that is the tenor of the times.
But let me just say this, the Fight for Your Rights is, you listen to the lyrics, I said, peaceful resolution. You look at the images, you'll see that the police and the principalities are attacking the people.
Yes.
That's what you see. And then you see what it means to just stand up for what's right in the spirit of Dr. King in a peaceful manner. Now, when you think of, some other things you were discussing, the homelessness, the jobs, the people voting a certain way, it's just like the old Willie Lynch letter. You pit the young against the old, the male against the female, the white against the black. But it's basically a class issue when you look at it. You said the poor brothers and sisters, well, let's be specific, the poor white brothers and sisters more so voted for the current administration, because he touched that button to let them know that even if you are white, first thing he said when he came down the elevator is he attacked our Latino brothers and sisters. Now he's trying to call them animals and this and that when their parents is being ripped away from the kids. So he's very, deceptive and very has a way of touching buttons. So for the brothers and sisters who voted for him for whatever reason, but for the most part, we talk about the poor brothers and sisters. It's always been a thing with me how somebody could vote against their own interests, but they vote against their own interests because you press that button of of race and of racism. And when you touch that button, what the most interesting thing in this last election, Sister Gigi, I know you're running for Senate, and I wasn't surprised at all, but I just think it's interesting that 55 to 65% of our white sisters voted that way, even though he said some of the things he did against sisters. But my thing is not a talk about really the president, or any political thing. My thing is all about the people. It's not about the principalities down. It's about the people up. And so when you look at Fight for Your Rights, we say if you want to save your friends, if you want to save your schools, if you want to save your businesses, if you want to save your children, if you want to save your families, if you want to save your country, you must fight for your rights in the spirit of Dr. King in a nonviolent way. And so this is a nonviolent protest song, but it's instructions in it. Organize, mobilize, protest, march, and vote. Vote. We want to make sure that our young brothers and sisters, as I talk to pastors, I've asked them to get the youth ministry, because young brothers and sisters on YouTube and Facebook, to see the video and discuss it intelligently at Bible study, so we can have people, run for office. First of all, vote locally, because that affects your life more so than nationally, but vote locally, statewide, nationally, and run for office. So I think there's positives and negatives in everything that happens. I think with the current administration in now, it sparked the interest in people to take more control of their life, their political lives, and run for office, just like Brother Zaki Barute, who's getting people all around the country, together, and so people know who each other are. And the sister that's going to be on my show tomorrow is Sister Audrey Scott Williams, who's running for council person there in Alabama. So we just want to make sure that it's all about the people, not about the principalities.
Yes. And the people have to come together. The people have to come together and unite and realize, and you may disagree with me, but it's us against them. And I think that's in that class system. And I think about A Tale of Two Cities a lot when I look at our country now. And in that book, A Tale of Two Cities, you had the rich and you had those who were in poverty that lived below, in the towns below them. And the people were planning a revolution, and the revolution was being done through knitting and crocheting. But again, it was a class system, and the people were getting to the point where it's like, no, I'm not going to do this anymore. And they finally rose up. And sometimes I wonder if in what's going on with this current administration, if they're not trying to make people so angry that they rise up and cause a civil discourse or a civil what is that, when the people are rising up and it becomes kind of a war and then the president has to take over. I'm scared they're trying to cause a civil war within the United States today. And looking at a video I looked at where they're now taking infants, 23-month-old infants from their mothers at the border. And these are people who they're not trying to skip in, they're going directly to the border. And the children and the babies are being taken and separated at the border, and the babies and children are being moved other places. Now, for me, I have volunteered with Children's Services on a child protective team for over 20-something years, and been a marriage and family therapist and chemical dependency counselor. What I've seen, and even volunteering to eradicate child sex trafficking, is I fear for the lives of those kids because too many rich people are being prosecuted going to third world countries for having sex with children. And if they're taking the children, and the United States has become number one in the world, we're no longer, third world countries no longer tops in child sex trafficking. As a matter of fact, Washington State is number one and California is number two in the world. So I'm concerned that these babies and these children might even be turned in be used for child sex trafficking. And that's an issue. So we really do have to stand up. We really do need to get people elected in 2018 so that 2020 we have a stronger group already in office and bring in another strong group in office to be able to change some of these laws that are allowing all of this to happen. What's your thought on that?
Let me just say this. First of all, I'm here to bring the good news. And, we need to connect the dots. I'm always telling you, just Sister Gigi, we need to connect these dots. And it's not so much us against them. I think there's so many great people in this nation. And if Dr. King get over 1 million people in 1963 on August 20th to come all across this country when he did the famous I Have a Dream speech, if he could get, they said it was a little over 250,000, but it was over 1 million people. I always downplay it. But if he could do that without cell phones, without texting, without the internet, without Instagram and all these things that we have today, there's no reason why with all this technology that we cannot connect these dots and get on the same page to move forward. But as I talk to people around the nation all the time, me, Sister Gigi, but now, so you kind of know, I talk to people in different cities all the time. But
yes, you do.
What they always leave out is that God component. See, they always leave out that God component. And so, if my thing is simply this, I only walk through the doors that God opens up. I don't knock on Satan's doors. And so I've been blessed to know all these great men and women of God, such as you and all these other people that I meet every day. God has blessed me to meet somebody new since January the 2nd, 2012, even on Sundays that I did not know the day before. But he's also placed all these great ministers, great men and women of God around me, and you know who my spiritual fathers are, Bishop Asen Phillips, who happened to talk to Dr. King on April the 4th, 1968, the morning of his assassination. And then, of course, Reverend Dr. Cecil Chip Murray, just turned 88, and doing great things. So, but all these thousands and thousands of ministers that God has placed in my path around me that are praying every day, not only for my health and well-being, but for the nation and for the world. See, the black minister is the compass, the GPS of this nation and the world. And so, the black church is the oldest, is the backbone of this nation. And
always has been.
Church, everything has been attacked now, even the black church, even the ministers have been under attack. But to bring the good news, God is still in control, Sister Gigi, as you know.
Yes.
And as we move down this road to victory, because the victory's already been won, there's going to be, Satan is trying to kill and destroy, steal, kill, and destroy as many people as he can as we move forward. And to try to brainwash people like that brother who's talking about he won't vote for you because they're getting a few luxuries in jail. Well, jail? Are you settling to live in jail? Are you settling to be in a cell? To be like an animal? You know what I mean? So in this, when somebody tells you what to do all the time, but the good news is God is still in control, Sister Gigi. And with God in control, I'm at peace with that.
And with that, I'm going to say I'm believing that God is putting people in position all over the world to make a change and to, and a lot of people don't believe that, but it's true. Peace will be here, and change is coming. Positive change is coming, but we also need the people, as you said, to organize, to protest. But when you protest, you have to follow that protest up with action. And one of those actions is voting. And one of the things I'm always asking people, do you know who your state rep is? Do you know who your state senator? Do you know your city council and your mayor? Your school board, those are your first line of defense. And then we move up to the governor and, the House and the Senate. And a lot of people will ask me, well, you haven't gone through those steps. Well, they really don't know what steps I've gone through, because I may not have been elected into positions, but I have been appointed into positions, and I have worked with those groups as a volunteer for many, many years. And so where I'm going, I'm being prepared for, because we also always hear you have to start at the bottom and move up. Well, you do if you don't have any experience. But then if we look at what we have now at the top, but I believe we have people that need to start at the bottom, but we also need to have those at the top, because as we've seen before, and even when you look at anything that's small that's on the bottom, that's at the top can squish it. And so we have to work from both sides in order to get our world where we need it to be. And we have to work united. We cannot be divided, and we cannot allow ourselves to be divided. And we can't look at those who are out there on the forefront trying to do and make things better and say they're doing a couple of things that are wrong, I'm not going to vote for them, or I don't agree with a couple of things. They have to look, what is the overall? What is the overall? What is the heart of the people? What is the heart of the person? And is the best interest of the people in that state and the people in their cities and their country, is their heart in the right place? And if their heart is in the right place, then they're going to do what's right. And I'm going to let you answer on that, because I know you're going to bring it around to the positive aspect of it, and then we're going to close out.
Well, let me just say this. When they say that you don't have experience, you should start from the bottom and then work your way up. First of all, everybody's journey, spiritual journey, is different. Just because a person didn't take a job in this whole political system, they don't know that your beginnings in Chicago and how you interacted with the political system there at an early age. And so everybody's journey is different. Sometimes they say, well, you have to have this type of experience, that type of experience. Well, there was a young man playing basketball tonight for Boston Celtics, even though LeBron won. His last name was Tatum. 2 years ago, he was a senior in high school. He played 1 year at college, and he was the best player on the team for Boston tonight as a rookie. So he didn't have to play in the NBA 5 to 10 years to have a great season. He was just ready for that time. So if you're ready for that time, and God has put you in a position for this time in history. So let me just say this. Now, everybody that I've met, Jennifer, as God is building the spiritual family across this nation and around the world. And this spiritual family and this movement that God has us a part of is not on the 6 o'clock news. But as we build this spiritual family across this nation and around the world, he's handpicking the people to be a part of this spiritual family. So if you just continue to do what you're doing, I have a lot of respect and love for who you are as a person, your commitment, your moral values. If you listen to the lyrics, fight for you, you don't go for the okie doke. You know what I mean? And so if you just continue to follow the doors and open the doors that God opens up for you, and don't knock on Satan's door, because, politics is a tricky game.
Ooh, yes. And
Johnson said, it's war. That's what he said when he ran for president in 1964. He said it's war. So all these different crazy things that happen in these political arenas around us, and all the deals that's made behind the scenes and this and that, don't even worry about that, my dear sister. Just to continue to be on the path that God has you on, and you're blessing people everywhere you go because you're real. And for that young brother who said he couldn't vote for you, you put something in his mind to make him think about it. And so if he still comes to that conclusion, well, life is about choices.
Yes,
but,
it is.
He did put something positive in his mind. So just stay the positive queen that you are.
Thank you.
And God will continue to bless you.
Yes, he will. Chili, I want to thank you so much. And audience, I want you to know at the last minute, because we were having technical difficulties, and the person that was supposed to be interviewed was unable to get through at the last minute. And so, Chili, I truly want to thank you stepping up and giving us the opportunity and speaking out about the peace and the love and being in love with love. I love that, that you talk about all the time. And I thank you for everything and every door that you have opened for me. This is going to be a very, very, this has been a very wonderful and unique campaign to this point, and I'm expecting it to continue. And so I thank you very much for coming in tonight, and I thank the station, Hamilton Radio, for tonight and all that they went through to make sure that this show happened tonight. And so this is our first night really coming at you. And I want to thank you. I want to thank those who are listening, thank those who are here, and I want to tell you good night and God bless.